Good morning, day 151, rise and shine, so beautiful. We've got a mirror effect going on here, like a double sunrise. Whew, beautiful, beautiful. Wow, and the geese are just like, the water's like glass, like a mirror. Geese are just floating along quietly. Okay, that's a little bit about where my mind went this morning as I was meditating on Isaiah. And there's a lot of, I don't feel so bad about using so many analogies all over the place because Isaiah's right there with me. Isaiah's like, this analogy, like that's how we think. I think that, there's a reason that analogies work and metaphor. We don't actually, if you've ever noticed, even though we have to speak with language, we don't think with language. It's not like when somebody says, hey, think of a tree, you don't see the letters TREE, right? You see a tree or something similar. Like we think in images. And that's part of why I think movies and television and, plays and whatnot can capture a lot with words, and why writing is sometimes so hard to capture everything that we can with visual and emotion and being fully in our senses, which is interesting that I say that. Because that's part of what I'm going to talk about today. So in all of this, we're hearing about, again, it's sort of the same old story we've heard a lot already in the Old Testament. The people are getting off track. They're doing things in their own strength. They're making alliances with each other versus trusting God. They're only trusting in their five senses. And the world as it seems, and what they see, think, feel, touch, like they're totally operating, in the world from a worldly perspective. And they've forgotten about God. One of my favorite analogies is that I think we think of a lot, and I think it's even used in the New Testament, is, jars of clay. Like he is the potter, we are the clay, and yet we walk around going, who do you think you are? You don't know what you're doing? I know better. And like the clay is like talking, and he's made whatever is up, and we're like, you got it wrong. And he's like, what? I'll show you. Yes, that is like the story of the human, right? We forget that we are the created thing because he gave us free will and choice. We don't have to think of that. I was, again, going back to the Matrix when they say red pill or blue pill. And then you learn, once you see that there is a choice is really an illusion, right? But until you are at that point, so the title of today is Wake Up! And the way for the human, paradoxically, to wake up and to see things as they are and to be able to kind of tap into the unseen and what our higher mind knows and be able to live from that place versus only in the survival or worldly place of the five senses, we have to get still and quiet. And there was a verse in chapter 30 that it says it actually right there. Like, I'm not making this up. I'm not even interpreting it or taking this and saying this is what it means. Like, it says it right there in, I think it's verse 15 or 16. It says, you keep trying to do things your own way. And it's on the heels of this analogy of the potter and the clay. And the way to being fully alive and having success, if you would just rest in me, quiet confidence in me. Your strength comes from me, and resting in me and believing in me and letting me do some of this heavy lifting. You just quiet down and trust, have faith in everything that I keep telling you. And they even have, the Bible is already being written. These stories are being told and passed down. Like, they've got evidence that God has showed up for them. The parting of the Red Sea, the plague, like the whole, delivering from Egypt. And now these people are going back and making alliance with the Egyptians. And he's like, he's like metaphorically smacking his hand upside his head going, you dum-dums, like, stop, wake up. You have fallen asleep again. And that is sort of the paradox of the human. Like, we have two minds. So we've talked about that a lot lately. We have our executive mind, that taps in and understands that something else is bigger is going on here, that we are created. And there's more than just what our five senses detect. And when we're only tuned into what our five senses detect and living from that place, that's actually where we're asleep. We're kind of zombies. We're just being like the animals. Like I talked about, like my dogs the other day. We just are living on pure instinct. And we can be alive that way. But are you awake? No, you're asleep to a whole nother part of your existence and what is possible and your potential. You're stuck down here. And it's like the dream, whenever you have those lucid dreams. This is why so many of now that we're in, it's a really interesting time to be alive with all of the technology. And if you pay attention at all to AI and how we all notice, like, our phones are listening to us and we're having a conversation with a friend, and now all of a sudden, or we even haven't had a conversation. You think about something you need, and all of a sudden you start getting ads on your phone. Like, we're in like that transition, and people are starting to think, wow, it's really possible to. And there are movies like Matrix and Inception, on all these movies that try to like capture this. Like, in order to live from an awake place in the world, you still have to interact with, people that are still asleep and zombies and function in the worldly world. But and then you consciously even go back in. But in order to really do it from a place of full consciousness, what do all the wise people of the world have in common? Whether you look at the Christian tradition, Eastern philosophy, like all of the wisdom practices, what do they include? What are these people doing that the rest of us aren't doing? Exactly what God says in this verse. They're getting quiet and still. The way to allow your higher mind to develop is to shut the physical body down. Or quiet it down. You can't shut it down, but you can quiet it down. That's what prayer does, meditation, breath work, all the different yoga, all the different practices that people do to be able to live fully awake. They've got to spend some time on a regular basis, getting quiet and still. Isn't that interesting? I found that really interesting this morning. And I've been doing it for a while now, but I did it sporadically for a while. So no wonder I kept feeling like I was awake, back asleep, awake, back. And of course I was using wine as my way to get still and check out, versus what God gave us naturally to be able to do. And even instruction. Like, he's like, here, you want to feel better in your body? Have some quiet time every day. Jesus did it. Like, if we live in the world all the time and we don't give ourselves a break from it, and not just from sleep, but intentional awake hours being quiet, our nervous system gets whacked out. And then we start turning to other things to soothe our nervous system. And that's the other thing that people aren't really awake to either, is that we think of our mind as just our brain that's thinking thoughts. But it's a whole system. It is your gut, it is your nervous system. We are not chopped up into body parts that operate independently from each other. It's a whole system that is working together. And in order to wake up to that and be able to give your whole mind, your whole self, what you need to function from a very clear, alive, awake place, you've got to spend some time in quietness. That's where we find our strength. I know, it's wacky, it's weird, but it's true. And this is what, in coaching, we talk about this a lot. Psychology talk, like all of the behavioral sciences and the mind and the neurological sciences confirm this. All the spiritual practices have this in common. This isn't just something that's quote unquote Christian, but the Bible also confirms it and talks about it. So you can either go, okay, this is just the way it is, and start doing it, and then you can start experiencing it, because some of these things, they just don't make sense until you do it, and then you're like, oh, this is what we're talking about. Okay, it goes from the head to the heart. And a lot of people, we hear it all the time, and I used to say it too, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that. And I'm telling you, you don't have time not to. If you want your life to feel like it has some order and balance and you have some control, you've got to check out from trying to control everything. That is actually where a lot of chaos comes from, is our tight wanting to control. Are you picking up what I'm putting down? And because all of that is an illusion. And if we're living only from our five senses, we're actually living in an illusion, in the matrix. And we need to unplug ourselves and wake up to the full reality of what is happening with our experience here on earth. Or we're going to miss it. Or we're going to be spending all of our time and energy on the things that don't fully serve us or our community or the world or God. So rise and shine, wake up. Or, if you're not the morning person like I am, because I have learned about this whole journey, just to give you personal illustration, I have learned if I don't get my, done in the morning, it doesn't get done. So the things that are the highest priority to me that help the rest of the day go well, they've got to get done in the morning. Because I will, you come up to me and say, hey, do this. Maybe one day I'll be fully more awake that I could utilize my whole day wisely. But right now I've got to meet myself where I am, and this stuff has to get done in the morning. So whatever works for you, if you can, and we can even do it in bite-sized pieces at a time. Can you take 1 minute in the bathroom? Can you take a 5-minute break in your car to check out so you can check in and wake up to the fullness of what life has to offer and what God is calling you to do? You cannot be awake and fully alive unless you're getting quiet and checking out of your five senses as much as possible on a regular basis. I know, it's paradoxical, but that's the way God works. So you got to trust him, or, and again, if you're not there with God yet, then this is not just a Christian belief. It's been proved throughout the world in lots of disciplines and philosophies. So this is the way for the human to wake up, is to get disciplined about getting still and quiet, and going within, so that confidence and strength can be integrated into your worldly life. So spend time waking up by getting quiet and still. All right, people, rise and shine. There we go. Beautiful. Have a beautiful day. Enjoy your last day of May if you're watching this live, or whatever day it is when you happen to catch this and my musings. And thank you for taking the time to listen. If it is at all helpful to anybody but me, this is a win. And even if it's just for me, it's still a win. All right, bye. Rise and shine.